Welcome to the Refurbishment Mastery podcast with me, Martin Rapley. If you're a property investor who is worried about paying too much for your next property, concerned that you don't know how to manage a refurb, or scared that you will be ripped off by a builder, then this is for you. In this podcast, I share over 30 years of experience of managing refurbishments and conversions to help you make more profit, save your time, and ultimately enjoy the process. On with the podcast. I'm going to be talking about 6 ways of adding value to your investment property. And in reality, if you're a property investor, you're not going to do a great deal without at some point needing to do or carry out a refurbishment. And that is my thing. That's exactly what I talk about. That's what I help property investors deliver in a much better way. The thing about investing now, over the last few years, probably over the last 5-6 years or so, what I've started to see is that if you just buy a property and refurbish it, you're going to struggle to add much, if any, value, because we've got stamp duty costs rising, we've got interest costs rising, the cost of building works generally are getting more expensive, building regulations are getting more onerous. And so as a result, the model of buy, refurbish, and flip is quite hard, if not impossible, to do in quite a large amount of the country. Therefore, if we want to add profit, if we want to make more from this, then what we really need to be doing is adding more value to the property than just delivering a straight refurbishment. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. Some ways beyond the basic refurbishment that we, all of us together, can add value to our properties. And in reality, what I want to do tonight is sow some seeds for you. I can't teach you everything you need to know in the next hour, but I can sow some seeds such that hopefully you're looking at properties in a slightly different way. When you're next viewing properties, you're perhaps getting different ideas, different inspiration, and working out ways that you can add, or you can buy property where there's an opportunity of adding more value, which ultimately I think is where we need to be. Now, as this is a webinar, I've got the chat turned on, but by and large, I'm not opening things up for questions or anything. I've got about an hour's worth of content. I don't want to run on late. So if you have got any questions from tonight's webinar, then feel free to drop me an email over. That email address is on subsequent slides as well. So just drop me an email. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can tomorrow or maybe over the weekend if necessary, and make sure you've got all of your questions answered. So, take a note of that. But as I say, it is on subsequent screens. So this is tonight's webinar. I'm still letting some people into the meeting as we go. Why should you listen to me? For those of you that have not heard me speak before, those of you where we haven't met, my background is actually construction. Nearly 40 years ago now, I left school. I worked for building contractors. I was originally a quantity surveyor. That's the person who looks after the finances for construction projects. I was in charge of looking after the numbers. Well, back in those days, I was in charge of making the tea, getting the sandwiches, and taking the minutes at the meetings. But you can see where it went to over the years. Finance and making money from construction projects has been my thing for nearly 40 years. I've always also been a project manager. I've done some estimating in there as well. So I've got a good grasp of how to deliver a project and how we make money from construction projects, and how we add value to construction projects without necessarily cutting corners. How we make more profit without cutting corners is actually really important as a property investor. I'm going to share some things with you tonight that will hopefully help you look at your projects or your potential projects in a slightly different way, and hopefully open up some ideas for you to add more value and ultimately make more profit from your next next projects. So the first way that I want to talk about tonight is reconfiguring the existing layout. So this is beyond refurbishing. This is what else can we do beyond refurbishing our property? And I'm going to go through the pros and cons of this and the others, and you can start to weigh up the ones that are right for you, the ones that are perhaps a little bit more ambitious for you at this stage, but you may grow into later in the year, into 2026. And as I get to the end, they're perhaps things that will be relevant if you're a little bit more experienced. So stick with me, and if you're looking to grow, then you'll get ideas and inspiration for everything. But if you're relatively new to property investing, or indeed totally new to property investing, and you're looking at your first or second project, then reconfiguring the existing layout is a really good place for you guys to start. It's not overly tricky. It's generally the cheapest option, so you haven't got to have lots of money set aside. And you know, if you're just getting started, as I say, this is possibly where you want to be. What I'm talking about here is taking an existing house, maybe adding a downstairs cloakroom, maybe adding an ensuite to the master bedroom, maybe taking down a wall between the kitchen and the dining room to open it up into a more usable family space, which is what most people tend to want nowadays. From an HMO perspective, maybe you're going to build a wall to separate or to split the large lounge diner in two, so you've got two bedrooms. Maybe you're going to put some additional en suites in. So, you know, we're not building anything extra. We're just repurposing the existing space to use it in a better way. And you know, this will add value. Not as much as some of the later ones, but this will add value to you. So reconfiguring the layout is generally going to be the cheapest. It's generally going to be the quickest project you can do. And generally, it's low risk. I can only say generally in here, but much of the time, these are relatively straightforward projects. The kind of projects that you can get going on if you're new to property investing, if you've never had experience of working with architects, working with builders, sorting out building regulations and things like that, then on projects like this, you will learn without a lot of risk. And if you do have a little bit of a slip up, it's not really that major, and I'm sure you can recover it. There are some things that you need to be aware of, though. The first is that if you are carving yours up into an HMO, do make sure that the rooms meet the minimum space standards for the HMOs in your area. Different areas have got different minimum room sizes for their HMOs. And as a result, you need to get to know your area particularly well. A lot of areas, the minimum size that is required is 6.5 square meters for a single room. But I'm well aware that in some areas there are no such things as single rooms, and they say the minimum for any room is a different figure. So make sure you're aware what those requirements are. Make sure you are aware what the requirements are for living space, kitchens, and things like that. Because just because it works as a family house doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work as an HMO. Be aware that some of the walls in your existing property can be structural. Now, structural walls actually do two things. The obvious thing is they hold up stuff above us, but they also tie together the outside walls in some situations as well. So even walls that would appear to be timber and may not be holding anything up can still be holding things apart or things together, depending on how it's built. So if you want to do alterations to walls, you're almost certainly going to need to employ a structural engineer to help you understand the implications of doing that work. But ultimately, the cost of getting a structural engineer involved isn't a great deal. The work they need to do isn't a great deal at all. In a lot of cases, if it's a masonry, if it's a brick wall, it will be structural in some way. And timber, it's about understanding a bit more of the structure, what's original, how was it built, and as I say, taking some advice if necessary. But be careful if you reconfigure that you're not over compromising the space. There's no point in a family house building a really nice ensuite in the corner of the master bedroom if that master bedroom is now almost too small, if it becomes smaller than the second bedroom, if it gets to a point where there's now just no space for the bed and some wardrobes and things. So be very careful that you don't compromise other things trying to reconfigure what you've got. And I've even seen that with HMO bedrooms where en suites have been built in the corner of small rooms, and really what's left is, yeah, it's from a space perspective, it's big enough, but from a usability perspective, it's not the best. So yeah, just consider all of that when you're looking at these schemes. So that's the first thing to do. Reconfiguring your existing layout is a really good place to start, as far as, for that anyone who's relatively new, and it's relatively straightforward. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, if you want to be a little bit more ambitious, then maybe you can consider converting an integral garage. The key thing about this is if we add an extra room, we are generally adding value to our properties. Even if that, whether that room's a bedroom or a living room, or you reconfigure the downstairs so that it's part of the kitchen or something like that, because there's extra floor space now, there is going to be extra value. And of course, from an HMO perspective, this could now be an extra bedroom, which of course will add extra value. When I'm talking about converting an integral garage, we're talking about, houses where the garage is actually built on the ground floor and the first floor goes over the top of it. So it's all part of the main block. I'm not talking about a garage that's kind of leaning on the side of the house, because those garages are almost certainly not in a suitable position to convert into a habitable room. If you wanted to convert them, you wouldn't convert. You'd actually demolish and start again. But if we've got a garage which is connected and is within the curtilage of the house, this is the kind of thing that we can do. In most parts of the country, it's permitted development. So you don't need to get planning permission to do this unless it's a listed building, unless it's in a conservation area. You shouldn't need to get planning permission for converting a garage. And generally, what we end up doing is we take out the garage door at the front, we brick up half of the opening, we put a window in what's left, we insulate the walls, we insulate the floor, we insulate the ceiling, plasterboard it all out, put some sockets in, put the carpet down, paint it, etc., and we've got a room. Sometimes we need to knock a hole through, a door through from the hallway. It just depends how the garage is accessed at the moment. There's frequently already a window in it. Sometimes you need to put in, you might want to put a window at the back of it, because it can be a little bit long and skinny, but there's sometimes a window down there. And a relatively straightforward project. So not a lot to worry about here. It's more than you would be doing if you were just reconfiguring a property. But as works go, still relatively easy and low risk. You will definitely, though, need to be using some consultants for this kind of work. And I will come on to that shortly. But I'm sure you've all seen properties with garage conversions, but hopefully now, when you're looking at potential opportunities, you're now seeing garage conversions as something to consider. In most areas, and I'm going to be very general here, you can convert garages from around about £15,000. Some of the bigger ones, some of the more complex ones might creep up towards 18, 20, but in a lot of places it's £15,000. And if you can demonstrate that that extra room is worth more than £15,000, which in certainly the affluent parts of the country it will be, then actually you've added value. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do and what I'm trying to help you with tonight. Now, there are some things to consider when we're converting a garage. The first thing is that frequently there's meters in there. Now, if you're converting a garage in a family house, it's probably not a problem leaving them in there. You can probably build a cupboard around them and it's all neat and tidy. But if you are going to convert this to use as an HMO bedroom, then you probably don't want meters and fuse boards and distribution boards in someone's bedroom. So you're probably going to have to pay to relocate those out of that particular space. Um, Sometimes the rooms can be, well, the rooms will be long and skinny. That's not necessarily a problem if you can get a door on the long side. But if your only way in is from the short side at the top end, it will feel as though it's quite a long, skinny room. So where you can, you do want to try and get a door on the long side, but it's not the end of the world getting it on the skinny side, but try and get it on the long side. If you get a door on the skinny side, you can just about squeeze an ensuite in there. Whereas if you can get a door on the long side, you definitely can get an ensuite in there as well, which for an HMO option may well be something that you want to consider there. Um, but as I said, you will need some specialists, some consultants to help you with this. This work absolutely falls under the building regulations. So you will need to engage an architect. You will need to get building regulation drawings from them. You'll need to get those drawings approved by your building control surveyor, and they'll need to come to site and see that your builder is actually building things correctly in a compliant way with the drawings that your architect has already put together for you. So don't skip that part of the process. If you do, it will come back and bite you. Ultimately, it will come back and bite you when you try to refinance or when you try to sell. So, yeah, do make sure you've got your building regulations in place as the work proceeds so that you're not dealing with it retrospectively. But all in all, as a stage two, so stage one is reconfiguring the existing property. Stage two, could you convert an integral garage to create some additional floor space and therefore add value? And could that value be more than £15,000, which is kind of the starting point for a lot of garage conversions? Being very general there, of course, without seeing your particular garage conversion and knowing exactly where you are in the country. So the next stage up, level 3, is now just a little bit trickier. So maybe some of you, this is where some of you might say, oh, well, I've done some of those easy things. So now let's look at the next thing. Well, the next thing is actually building extensions. And the thing with extensions, again, is that we are adding more space to our property again. And if we're adding more space, more footprint, we are adding more value to our property. The thing with extensions is you've got more scope as far as flexibility and size goes. So you can build on the back. It doesn't have to be the full width of the back. It could be just part of the back, perhaps so that some existing windows aren't compromised. You may be able to build on the side of the property, and you know, work out the right size for what you need. If you want an ensuite bedroom for an HMO, you can build it exactly the right size. You can build it at 12 and a half square meters or so. You don't need to build 15 and have a room that's too big. You can build exactly what you need. So this is gives you a lot more versatility in that respect than, say, converting a garage where you've got the size and shape of the existing garage. Again, in most areas, this is permitted development. So an extension can be built on the rear of your house. If you've got a semi-detached or terraced house or bungalow, by the way, then you can build 3 meters under permitted development. You can build 6 meters under a neighbourhood notification process, which is a little bit more onerous, but it's not full planning permission. In a detached property, you can build 4 and 8. So 4 if it's 4 under permitted development and 8 under the neighbourhood notification process. You can also build on the side of the property to the equivalent of half the width of the existing house. So if your existing house is 6 meters wide, you can build an extension up to 3 meters wide on the side of the house. So this is all permitted development, assuming you're not in a conservation area, you've not got a listed building, and in 1 or 2 minor areas where there's a few little extra regulations. Check your local area, but by and large, this is permitted development wherever you build it. And of course, if you can build a 2-story extension, then we've got even more value. We've already got foundations, we've already got a roof. So if we just put an additional floor in the middle, we haven't got to do. It's not this. It's not really double the cost. It kind of heads towards that, but it's not double the cost. If you want a really, really rough rule of thumb for extensions, the magic number is £2,000 a square metre of finished floor. So measure up the finished floor of downstairs, measure up the finished floor of upstairs, and multiply that by £2,000, and that will give you a very rough idea as to what the cost is going to be. Now, I just want to flag up one little thing here. When I said this is permitted development, it's permitted development to build on the back of our existing house. It's permitted development to build on the side of our existing house. But it's not permitted development to join up that little bit in the corner. So we can only build off the back wall and off the side wall. We can't build an L-shaped extension under permitted development. So don't get carried away with that. You would need full planning permission there, which has got an element of risk attached to it. And that may well be a risk that you don't want to take. And certainly I'm well aware of investors that get themselves into various challenges and difficulties as a result of as a result of buying a property and then finding that or relying too much on planning permission, I suppose is the summary there. Now, if you want to do extensions, there's a few things to be aware of. First thing is that if you can't get access round to the back of your property, let's say you're in a long row of terraced houses and the only way into the back garden is through the house, then that's going to be more expensive. Everything's got to be dug by hand. Everything's got to be taken out by wheelbarrow and wheeled to the front. If you're in an area where parking is tricky outside, which some of these Victorian houses, it can be difficult to park in the street, then that's going to be reflected in the price. And that figure of £2,000 I gave you may just creep up towards 2,000, 2,050, 2,100. It's not going to go up massively, but it will definitely go up if you've got poor access to the rear. Whereas if you've got a sideway, if you're at the end of terrace and there's a sideway, or if there's a road at the back, some of these I know have got footpaths. As long as that footpath isn't too far from the road, then it's not too much of a problem. Another challenge to watch out for when building extensions is if there's drainage where you want to build your extension, particularly if you can see a manhole cover there. That's the clue. There's drainage there. You may be able to look over the fence either side and see manhole covers in the same location next door. So that suggests that there's a straight line of drains behind the property. Now, back in the day, back 15, 20 years ago, you could just extend over the top of all of those drains. No one batted an eyelid. But you're not allowed to do that now unless that drain is only serving your property. Then you can't build over the top of that. And you have to approach your local sewer company, your water company, and get permission. What we do is we actually talk about a build over consent. Although most of the time they won't let you build over it, what they'll ask you to do is alter the flow of the drain. So where the drain comes into your garden, you'll need to put an angle on it to take it around the extension, and then it comes back and connects in with the neighbours where the drainage goes out to the neighbour. So that's a cost that you've got to factor in. And in some cases, that drainage could be quite a long way down. Sometimes it might only be a foot or two down, but I have seen drains there that have been, 6, 8 foot down. So, 2 meters or so down, which obviously is something that is expensive to sort out. So do some research, do some checks, make sure that you're not under budgeting for that work. It's not impossible to do. It's just a little bit of process and some cost. The other thing to watch out if you're extending on the back of a property, particularly, is that you will end up with a chunk of building in the middle, which is now get likely to be dark. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen properties that have had a rear extension put on them, and not only have they got windows or doors at the back, but they've also got roof lights on the top of them, and that is as an attempt to get lighting into the middle of the property. Now, depending on how you want to use the rooms, if this is going to be a living room, if it's going to be a kitchen diner, it probably isn't too much of an issue. But remember, you can't have a standalone bedroom in an HMO in the middle of the property, which has got no windows at all. So you've got to think about the layout so that what we end up having is longer rooms that go front to back rather than side to side. Because as soon as we go side to side in an HMO situation, we probably end up with rooms with no windows. And whilst that could work as a kitchen, it's going to compromise it. And I would suspect you're going to get more churn of tenants in that situation. So look for layouts that go front to back. The thing is, though, with extensions as well, you are going to need to appoint an architect. Your architect will help you work out the best layout. Hopefully, they'll also help you work out the most economical way of getting what you need to get from your property. So extensions are great. And you've probably seen it all of the time that people are adding extensions to the back of their houses all the time. The builders know exactly how to do these. Architects know how to do them. They are relatively straightforward things to do. They're going to take a little bit longer, of course, and they cost a little bit more. But as we can see, at £2,000 a square metre, that might cost, say, £20,000 to build an HMO bedroom, maybe just a little bit more than that. But what's the value of that bedroom? If you could build something a little bit bigger that maybe becomes a kitchen diner, and now you've got some more bedrooms in the property as a result, where there's extra value there. And of course, if you're thinking of flipping, then there'll be additional value there because you're creating more floor space than you actually started with in the first place. So that's number 3. The thing about extensions is they're at ground level, relatively easy to do, and unless you've got, I suppose the only thing to really be aware of with extensions is if you've got really sloping ground. Just be mindful if you've got to start excavating because the back garden slopes, that's going to add on more cost. Then you've probably got to hold up the rest of the garden. That's going to add on cost. So in some places, that's not going to add any value. But by and large, extensions are relatively straightforward to do. And you'll create some nice space there. Number 4, so the fourth way, so we've looked at reconfiguring the existing layout. We've looked at converting an integral garage. I've now spoken about extensions. Number 4 is to convert a loft. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen properties where lofts have been converted. And we've been converting lofts in this country for, I don't know, probably 40 odd years now. Sadly, a lot of the ones done 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and perhaps even 20 years ago have not been done in a way that's at all compliant. And you will find property on the market where the bedroom that looks like there's a bedroom up in the loft is described as a loft room. It's not described as a bedroom because the estate agent is aware that it's not being converted particularly well, and isn't compliant as far from a number of standards. But things that we can look at if we're buying a property that has got scope for converting the loft is that it is obviously an enormous amount of space you're buying that actually currently has got no value at all. So If you can convert it, it's just like the others. If you are adding more floor space to your property, then you're actually going to add value. So, this is great. This is free space you've got effectively up in your loft space. And in most properties, it's enough space for a bedroom and a bathroom. In some properties, you'll get two bedrooms up there, maybe not a bathroom. The next size up, you obviously will get two bedrooms and a bathroom. So, for an HMO, you'd get a nice bedroom bathroom up there. For a family house, you would definitely get a nice master bedroom with perhaps even a bit of a walk-in wardrobe and a bathroom as well, depending on the type of property you've got. And I'm thinking here about taking the back roof off and building a flat roof dormer on the back of it. So that's the kind of things that we would normally do here. And loft conversions, as with extensions and garage conversions, are permitted development. As long as you've not got a listed building and you're not in a conservation area, they're permitted development. We are allowed to build, we're allowed to take off the back, where we've got the back slope, we're allowed to take this roof off and we're allowed to build a triangle box on the back so that we've got that's called a dormer window. We're not allowed to do that on the front. We're allowed to put a roof light in the slope if we want to, but we are allowed to go backwards on all properties. Now, of course, some properties haven't got the roofs pitched front to rear, they've got them pitched side to side. There's no permitted development to build that triangle on the side of those ones. So you do need to look for the right profile of property. But if you can get up there, there's actually they can be really, really nice rooms. And ultimately that will be reflected back in the rent. It will be it's a really nice a really nice master bedroom suite for a family house. It's a really nice premium HMO bedroom, if that's your model. And likewise with serviced accommodation, it would be a bit of a premium room. You could probably get, depending on where you are, an extra, maybe £20 more for rooms up in the roof space, £15-20 a month more for rooms up in the roof space, even if they're the same dimensions as something else where in the house. I tend to find that more people are excited by how light and bright an area is up in the roof space. It's away from the noise of the front door and the road and things like that. So yeah, they're premium rooms up there. So you can get some good value from them. Do be careful though, because more modern properties have been built with truss roofs. Truss roofs, you've probably seen these traveling around on the motorways on the back of flatbed trucks. They are factory made. Effectively, the roof itself, the triangle timber parts of the roof are made in a factory. And they are designed by computer to be the smallest and slimmest that will hold up everything that needs to be held up. And so you can't always reconfigure those. You can't always modify those to be able to get into those roof spaces. You can get into roof spaces of older Victorian type stuff and 1920s, 1930s properties. You won't have any problems in those roof spaces. Probably not in the 50s, 60s. You shouldn't have too much problem. 70s, a lot of the properties in the 70s were built with very shallow roofs. So you probably won't find many of those out there. But more recent ones, you can still get into the roof of those, but just be careful that they haven't. If you go up in the roof and there is a sea of timber, that is probably suggests that you've got truss rafters. And I wouldn't be guaranteed that you could convert that. I would want to be talking to a structural engineer about the mechanics of converting it. If you can't convert it, what you've got to do is rebuild the whole roof, which of course is a bit more cost that you need to factor into the whole thing. Let's jumping in to make sure that you have everything you need. Now, in a number of these podcasts, you would have heard me talk about my community, and I want to ensure that you know how you can join that community. Obviously, within these podcasts, there's a limit to the detail I can go into the recording, and of course, a lot of things are very generic. So, what if you had access to join me on a Zoom call for 90 minutes every single week in a group coaching environment? You could get your questions answered whenever they come up and learn from other members' questions. Plus, you also get 10 hours of training videos, an HMO refurbishment case study, some sample documents and checklists that will help you run your projects far more effectively. Membership of my community is just £89 a month. You get the first month free, and you can also cancel anytime after that. Plus, as a listener of this podcast, there's a promo code to help you save £20 every single month that you remain a member. So just make a note of VIP discount 20, VIP discount 20, all in capital letters, and put that into the checkout. You'll find the checkout on my website, www.refurbishmentmastery.com. Scroll down the page, you'll find the link for the Project Management Accelerator. Use the promo code VIP discount 20 and you'll be signed up at just £69 a month. I look forward to seeing you in that community very, very soon. Now back to the podcast. So do be careful of truss roofs. Now, the other thing to consider is, of course, pretty obvious, you need enough head height. How much head height do you need? Well, if you had a room that was 2.1 meters high, you would feel it's compromised, but you would feel it works. But to get a loft conversion 2.1 meters high, bearing in mind that the floor gets built up a little bit on a structural steel beam and the roof needs to be insulated, you probably need to be looking for a roof where the height from the timber to the underside of the ridge beam at the highest point is probably at least 2.3 meters. If it's less than that, you're probably going to be a bit too compromised up there. And if it is compromised too much, then you're not going to get that additional value. So, so do double check that. Try and measure that as part of your viewing. If you've got any opportunity to get up into the roof space, measure that head height if you think you might be thinking about converting the loft. Because sadly, again, I've met a lot of property investors who have set off to convert the loft and found out the hard way that what they wanted to do up there doesn't actually fit. And also be careful of specialist loft conversion companies at this point. As property investors, we probably don't need them. The specialist companies charge a premium because they're used to working with members of the public. They're used to working in occupied houses. They're used to working from the outside in effectively, and they'll break through at the last minute to cause the minimum amount of inconvenience for the occupier. These companies will also deal with any drawings, the structural details. If it needs planning, they'll deal with that as well. And so because you're going to a one-stop shop, you will pay a premium. Whereas if you're already refurbishing a property, the average builder that can refurbish a property can also convert a loft. There's nothing overly complicated about it from a building perspective. Once your architect and your structural engineer have done the drawings and put the details together, they are the instructions that the builder will follow. And as long as you go to an established building company rather than, say, a handyman type business, they'll be able to do you a loft conversion. And even splitting out the architect, splitting out the surveyor, using your own builder, that is still likely to be cheaper than going to the loft specialist company that you'll see doing residential family houses. By all means, go to them if you've got an existing property that's occupied. Maybe you've got an HMO and you want to put an extra room up there. Then go to one of these specialist one-stop shop companies because they're less likely to inconvenience your tenants. And of course, there's a value to that as well. But by and large, most of the projects we're doing, you won't really need to worry about talking to these specialist companies. So that's opportunity number 4 of 6 to add value, and a little bit more specialist than the extensions. Prices are higher for loft conversions. Now, loft conversions are quite hard to give you a ballpark figure. You are definitely not going to get it done for less than £30,000. If you want a bathroom up there as well, then that's going to start going up. The bigger the roof, the more space there is up there, the more that's going to go up. In expensive parts of the country, outer London, Birmingham, Manchester, some of the Midland cities now, you're going to see it over 40, probably £45,000 plus. Um, and if you've got complicated things, I've seen them sail over the 50k mark. So you do need to be sure that they are adding value to you in the longer term. They're definitely not that easy value add that they were many years ago. They've got more expensive. That's partially down to the building regulations being a little bit more onerous. So that's why I've put them at number 4 and extensions as number 3, because number 3, the extensions in number 3 are definitely cheaper, and you will get a good room from that, but maybe not quite your premium room that you'll get up in the roof space. Now, number 5 is perhaps the other part of the property you've not considered so far, which is a basement conversion. Now, basement conversions, in reality, you need to be really cautious about. A property that you've seen where you think there's a chance of converting a basement is something that you possibly need to take some more consultants' advice on before relying on the fact that you can convert the basement. So my view is you only consider converting the basement if the other options don't work. And I might even say the other options don't work, therefore I'm not even going to worry about converting the basement. I'm going to go and find another property, because basement conversions are definitely, definitely should be seen as a last resort. There is higher risk in converting basements. The biggest challenge is you've often got to dig the floor down. And if you dig the floor down, you now run the risk of undermining the foundations. And now you've possibly got to underpin as well. You've often, to get the staircase in, you've often got to compromise something up on the upper floor. So that isn't always the best thing. So you've really got to go into basement conversions with your eyes wide open. They are a cost that can very easily run away with themselves. And the thing to consider is that the rooms that you create down there are compromised. You've got to put in, if they're habitable rooms, you've got to put in a means of escape window that possibly goes out into a light well, that possibly goes up a ladder onto the pavement level or onto your driveway garden level. But you can't then have a hole out the front that someone can fall down. So now you've got to put some railings around that. So anyone using those rooms is going to feel as though they're in a little bit of a prison. The light is coming in at a high level. You've been in these rooms, you know what I'm talking about here. So therefore, that same size room down in the basement is not going to attract the as rent as high as it will on the first floor, or anywhere near as much as what it might attract if it was up in a loft conversion as the same dimensions. You may also have some plumbing problems to think about down on the ground floor. You can in the basement. You can very easily be below drainage, so you can't put bathrooms down there without understanding how that's working, or without adding some pumps or something like that, which again will compromise your property or compromise your rents to a certain extent. So as you can see from what I'm saying here, you be very careful about basement conversions because the cost can run away. These are even harder to give budget costs from. I don't think you're going to see any change out of £30,000 in most cases. There might be one or two where you can do it a little bit cheaper, but with waterproofing and insulation and staircases and means of escape and light wells and things like that, it's going to be rapidly running towards £30,000. And as I say, with the rooms being compromised, you're not going to get the value quite as well. If you have to dig down and start underpinning, then actually it's not even going to be commercially viable in many parts of the country. Central London, you'll know that there's properties in central London where they've dug 2, or I'm sure sometimes even 3 basements. In central London, it's absolutely viable. In the home counties, it probably is. In the affluent Midland cities, it probably is. Most other places, it probably isn't. So, do definitely go into this with your eyes wide open. You've got limited working space, that pushes the cost up. And ultimately, the summary of converting basements really is this is not something that I would recommend if this is your first scheme. If this is your first scheme, think about those first four options, decide at what level you want to pitch yours. But I really wouldn't be doing basement conversions as your first scheme, unless you are perhaps in the centre of London, or in a real prime part of some of the other cities, because there is a lot of risk attached to basements. You don't know what you might find. I bought a property many years ago and got planning permission as part of that to convert the basement into a flat. But as part of that conversion, you had to dig down the floor. And we were never totally sure we wanted to do that. What we actually ended up doing was selling the property with the planning permission. We made an uplift because we gained planning permission on that property. What I subsequently found out was that sadly the builder or the developer who bought it from us did find all sorts of remains in the basement. It turned out that, well, actually the property was next to a church, and it turned out that there was signs of graves. I don't think they ever found any bodies, but there were signs of graves, so they had to go carefully, and it just added on costs and time. So no one wants any of that, particularly not your first deal. I don't want you to be put off from adding value to property because the first one didn't go well. I'd much rather hear that you've gone nice and steadily and grown into it nice and slowly. So that if you have got a tricky project, at least you've got some experience under your belt. So those are the first 5 ways. I did say I'd share 6 ways with you. I will come to number 6 shortly, but those are the first 5 ways. Number 1, we reconfigure the existing structure. We move some walls around, and we create slightly different users space, add some extra rooms, maybe en suites, cloakrooms, things like that. Relatively easy place to start and simple to get going. Number 2 is we convert an integral garage. So I'm not talking about a garage that's stuck on the side of the property. We're talking about an integral garage. And the costs there are going to start at about £15,000 or so. Number 3 is to build an extension, which might include demolishing the existing rubbish garage that's on the side of the house at the moment and rebuilding that as a proper room. Relatively straightforward, relatively low risk. Although I am in there reminded that I worked on a project a few years ago where the builder rang me and said they'd found a well at the back of the property where they were building an extension. So there's still things that can come about. It can be resolved, but unfortunately, any resolution has always got a cost attached to it. So extensions is definitely the next one up from a garage conversion. If you want to go a little bit more, then consider loft conversions. A little bit more expensive than an extension, but some nice rooms can be created up there, and effectively it's all free space. And then number 5, I've spoken about basement conversions, but go to number 5 with caution. Don't put all your eggs in one basket thinking that a basement conversion is the solution, because sadly it can be a real money pit. So go carefully. I'm going to come to number 6 very shortly. I've just got a question for you before we get to the end. I'm going to wrap up at 8:30 or so anyway. But I just encourage you to ask this question. You may well already have received a text message asking you this question and asking you to score this webinar. If you haven't received it already, it will come through in the next 5-10 minutes or so. I'd be delighted if you could score this webinar. We like to keep up to date with how good the content is that I'm delivering. So score it between 1 and 10. I would hope that we're up around the 10 mark. I'd be delighted to receive your comments, good or bad. And if you've got some negative comments you want to share with me, please do just put them in that text message. So that will come through as a text message rather than putting them into the chat here. But thanks to those of you that have put it into the chat already. if you wouldn't mind replying to the text message, that would be really appreciated. If you've got any comments, then please feed them back because I can get them into other webinars. The common question that people, the common comment people say about my webinars is Martin didn't allow me to unmute and ask questions. I did say that at the beginning. I haven't really got the time to do that. I have put up my email address on just about every slide, and it's coming up again before the end. So you're welcome to send me an email and I'll drop you a reply back on that tomorrow or maybe over the weekend. So let me just, before I go on to number 6, just talk to you about how I can support you further with these projects, because you might be thinking that some of these projects you really want to do, you really want to get your teeth into, but you're really feeling as though you just need someone that can hold hold your hand and guide you through. And that's exactly what I do with hundreds of property investors on a regular basis. So if you're not aware of how I can help you, I'll just run through this slide so that you're clear what I'm talking to you about tonight. And by the way, this is an absolute no-brainer. So I've got a community and we have weekly group coaching calls. There's over 200 people in that community. The coaching calls tend to get between 20 and 30 people joining me every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock for about 90 minutes or so. The calls are all recorded, so if you can't make that time, you can listen back. Members ask me questions every single week. Could be relating to content in this webinar, could be relating to properties that they've been to see, floor plans, something an architect said, finding builders, employing builders, things that have happened on their projects. We talk about everything, and everyone hears everyone else's questions. So you can learn from everyone else's questions. I tend to do most of it anonymously. So if you've got a bit of an embarrassing slip up, don't worry about that. I'll share that without sharing any names or anything like that. So there's real value of having me there every single week to help you. We've got a private Facebook group where you can post your questions and people will feedback and comment as well. On top of this, I also give 3 power calls a year. Although I don't really keep a record of how many calls anyone's had, you can effectively book a power call with me, and we can take something away from the group coaching if you've got a real difficult thing that you want to just get my advice on. That's not a problem at all. There's loads of sample documents and check sheets, so you'll get a list of you'll be able to get access to all of those. You can copy things that I do, documents that I use. You can copy all of those, repurpose them for yourself. There's also about 9 hours of training videos taking you from start to finish through projects. And then there's also a case study of an HMO conversion as well. Gives you ideas and inspirations. You'll see videos of how I've done some of my rooms and things like that. So you'll get a really good feel how I converted a 9-bedroom bedsit type arrangement into an 11-bedroom top of the range HMO. So that'll give you some ideas and inspiration. And as I said, all the previous calls are recorded as well. So you'll see all of those. This is a monthly membership program. So your commitment is actually only on a month by month basis. So you join for the first month. It's £89 on a monthly basis. And once you've run out of need for it, then you just let us know, and we stop taking the payment at that stage. Because you're on tonight's webinar, I wanted to make you an offer. So there is a promo code to save £20 every single month. So the monthly fee will go from £89 to £69. That is less than £16 a week. So you're getting 90 minutes of content for less than £16 a week and access to ask your questions to me. So it's brilliant value as far as I can see. But because you don't know me, some of you haven't ever met me before or spoken to me or heard me speak before, what I want to say to you is I want to make this is such a brilliant program. I just want to make it a no-brainer for you to join. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you your first month free. So you get 4 weeks, 4 calls in the group for the next month before you have to pay anything. This is a super special QR code and link here. It's not the one that you'll get to if you go through my website. Until tomorrow night, Friday at 5 o'clock, this will be live. But after that, I'm taking it all down. You will get some emails tomorrow to remind you, but I want to make it so that it's so obvious that it's an obvious thing to join. When you sign up, make sure you put the promo code on the page where you put your credit card details, and make sure that when it asks, you may well get a message from your credit card company to verify the payment. Make sure you verify the payment. It may come through asking you to verify a payment of zero. If there is a problem if there is a problem in the in anything, and I can see you've signed up tonight, then we will reimburse you. If the promo code doesn't work or something goes wrong, we will reimburse you tomorrow. We'll get it all sorted out for you. As I say, I'm only running this until tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, maybe 5:30. I can't remember what time. You'll get a few emails tomorrow reminding you, and then this page will be turned off. It really is a no-brainer. I've got loads of people in there at the moment. So the link is on the bottom of the screen there. Take a screenshot. If you want the link at the bottom, you can copy that out. Use the QR code if you want to go in via your phone. If neither of those work for you, then you'll receive some emails tomorrow. You can click on the link in the emails tomorrow. It will take you to the same page. But the page is being turned off tomorrow evening. So don't delay. I wanted to make it really easy for you. And thank you to the person who's just put that into the chat. I haven't got it to hand to put into the chat. Let's come to number 6. So let's talk about the sixth way. And in reality, the sixth way of adding value is combining some or all of what I've already spoken about. Now, this is probably something for you if you're a little bit more experienced. You may be able to combine 2 of those ones, but perhaps you don't want to necessarily go for all 5 with your first one. But of course, now what we're doing is maximizing the impact. We've got a little bit of value from all of those previous 5 ways. Now by putting combination of those together, we're now getting a much bigger value add. And that is where you're really going to start to make good profit from your scheme, where you ought to be able to leave a lot less, if any, money in your scheme, or indeed sell it for a good profit. The thing about these kinds of deals is there's not many people looking at them. Most amateur property investors that are just getting started are just looking at extensions and loft conversions. Could you find opportunities where other people can't find deals, but because you're now aware of more ways of adding value, could there now be some deals in your area? Amateur investors aren't looking at this, but then generally neither are small developers. Small developers need more than this. A few builders might be looking in this area, but builders don't know about the HMO model or even the serviced accommodation model. So they're not necessarily going to see the value perhaps from sui generis planning relating to 7-person HMOs. And of course, if you've got these bigger, grander properties, you're almost certainly going to make better monthly cash flow. And cash flow is what puts food on your table. Profit from selling a property, which comes to us in lumps and may only come every 5, 6, 8 months or so. Cash flow is what actually keeps us all sane, puts food on the table and money in our pockets for doing all the things we want to do. So these bigger projects will definitely generate you more cash flow as a result. So, good to step up to, but perhaps not for you right away. But as I say, join Project Management Accelerator program I was just talking about, and you've got me guiding and supporting you and helping you step up to these bigger deals. So perhaps, whilst you may be fairly inexperienced, perhaps these bigger deals are actually going to be dead right for you, because you now know how for £16 a week, less than £16 a week, you can have someone guiding you every step of the way. There is some more complex and more risk attached to these, but if you've got someone guiding you, they can help you understand all of the risk and understand and make sure you understand what you're doing in here. So If you want to step up and you want to step up quickly, then I would seriously consider these combination projects, but just consider whether you would benefit from some additional support. Because if you are inexperienced, there is a lot to learn, and it will be a bit of a baptism of fire on these bigger, more complex projects. Not impossible, but it's just something to be aware of. Ultimately, you really need an expert in your team. You could go and get a project manager, but that's going to cost you thousands of pounds. Or you could actually have me in your team every Tuesday morning for 90 minutes, learning from me, but also learning from other people, asking their questions that will hopefully give you ideas, inspiration, and solutions to things that you're looking at and doing for yourself at the moment. So I said I would finish at 8:30. It's a minute or so short of 8:30. There is that QR code and the promo deal again. As I say, there'll be a few emails come out to you tomorrow, just reminding you that this deal finishes at 5:30, I think it is tomorrow night, but it will say in the email what time. I ran this little deal for a training course I was doing last week for the first time ever. I can't say when I'm going to run it again. I might do it on another webinar, but it definitely is not there day in, day out. If you go to the website, you will not get to this page that says get your first month free, and you'll find that's written on that page when you get there. If you have any problems with discount codes or anything like that, just sign up and we'll sort it all out in the morning. One of my team will get back to you and resolve anything if anything goes wrong. So with that, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight. Thank you for giving up some time to grow your knowledge, your expertise, your education. I'm here to help you with your delivering your refurbishments and conversions. I really hope there was something that you got from tonight's content. I'll be doing another webinar next month, totally different subject. So look out for that when the emails come out. If I bump into you in the meantime at any property events, then do come up and speak to me. Otherwise, have a really good month, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. Please do like, share, and leave a comment where you can. If you need any guidance or advice with anything to do with your refurbishments or conversions, then don't hesitate to reach out. You can book a free call with me by clicking on the link at the top of my website, refurbishmentmastery.com. There's other ways you can contact me in the show notes as well. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.